Madison Square Garden, 1974. The arena lights blazed down on the boxing ring as 20,000 spectators settled into their seats for what was supposed to be a simple exhibition match. Muhammad Ali, recently reinstated after his 3-year ban for refusing military service, was scheduled to face journeyman boxer Eddie Williams in a charity event benefiting children's hospitals across New York City. The atmosphere was electric, buzzing with anticipation to see the Sea Greatest back in action. Vendors hawked programs and refreshments while commentators prepared their microphones, ready to capture every moment of Ali's famous footwork and lightning-fast combinations. In the front row, celebrities and boxing dignitaries chatted excitedly, occasionally glancing toward the tunnel where the fighters would soon emerge. What none of them knew, what nobody in the arena could have possibly anticipated, was that Eddie Williams wouldn't be stepping into the ring that night. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed through the speakers, momentarily silencing the crowd. "Due to unforeseen circumstances, Eddie Williams is unable to compete in tonight's exhibition match." A wave of disappointment swept through. The audience followed immediately by confused murmurs. Would the event be cancelled? Would they get refunds? The announcer continued, "However, we are pleased to inform you that a replacement has volunteered, and Muhammad Ali has graciously agreed to proceed with tonight's charity event. If this story has already made you feel something, no matter how small, don't leave without giving back. Comment and tell me where you're watching this video from and subscribe to the channel." When Ali entered the arena minutes later, the crowd erupted into cheers. The champion moved with his characteristic grace, dancing slightly to the rhythm of his entrance music, acknowledging his fans with raised gloves and that unmistakable smile. He climbed into the ring and leaned against the ropes, waiting for his mystery opponent. The crowd fell silent as a thin, middle-aged man in borrowed boxing gear walked slowly toward the ring. There was nothing impressive about his physique, nothing that suggested he belonged in the same ring as the heavyweight champion of the world. The confusion in the arena was palpable. "Introducing," the announcer's voice seemed hesitant, "stepping in as tonight's opponent, Robert Harkins." As the unknown man climbed awkwardly through the ropes, Ali's trainer, Angelo Dundee, rushed to his fighter's corner, clearly agitated. "What is this?" he demanded of the officials. "Some kind of joke?" Ali placed a calming hand on Dundee's shoulder. "It's fine, Angelo. Let me handle this." The referee called both fighters to the center of the ring for instructions. Up close, the contrast was even more striking. Ali in his physical prime, towering over the nervous-looking substitute who appeared to be in his late 40s, with graying hair at his temples and hands that trembled slightly as the referee spoke. When they returned to their corners, Ali leaned through the ropes toward Dundee. "Something's not right here," he murmured. "Find out who this man is." As the bell rang for round one, Ali moved forward cautiously, circling his opponent with his guard up. Robert Harkins stood flat-footed in the center of the ring, his hands barely raised to protect himself. Ali feinted with a left, expecting the man to flinch or cover up, but Harkins remained motionless, simply staring at the champion with an unreadable expression. Ali pulled back, circling again. The crowd began to grow restless, some calling for Ali to finish him or get on with it. But something in Robert Harkins' eyes made Ali hesitate. Instead of throwing a punch, Ali stepped back and lowered his hands slightly. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice low enough that only Harkins could hear. The man's reply was equally quiet. "Because I made a promise." The first round ended with neither man having thrown a meaningful punch. As Ali returned to his corner, Angelo Dundee was waiting with information. "His name is Robert Harkins," Dundee whispered urgently. "He's a janitor at Mount Sinai Hospital. He's not a boxer, never has been." Ali's brow furrowed. "Then why is he in this ring?" Before Dundee could answer, the bell rang for round two. Ali approached his opponent again, this time with curiosity rather than caution. The crowd had grown increasingly restless, slow hand claps and boos beginning to echo through the arena. "You're not a fighter," Ali stated plainly, keeping his voice below the crowd's noise. "No, sir, I'm not," Harkins replied, still making no attempt to raise his guard or move around the ring. "Then why are you here? Who are you?" Ali pressed, throwing a few light jabs that deliberately fell short of their target. Harkins didn't flinch. "I'm standing in for someone who can't be here," he said, his voice steady despite the increasingly hostile crowd. "My son." Something in the man's tone made Ali step back. He gestured subtly to the referee to give them space, then moved closer to Harkins. "Tell me about your son," he said. "Jimmy," Harkins said, his eyes never leaving Ali's. 17 years old. Boxing was his life. Had your poster on his wall since he was 8. Said he was going to fight you someday. Ali nodded, understanding beginning to dawn. "Where is Jimmy now?" "9th floor of Mount Sinai," Harkins answered, his voice cracking slightly. "Leukemia. They don't think he'll make it to Christmas." Ali's expression changed, a flicker of compassion replacing his confusion. The champion glanced around at the booing crowd, at the officials signaling for more action, at the television cameras capturing what appeared to be a farce of a boxing match. "Hit me," Ali said suddenly. Harkins blinked in surprise. "What?" "Throw. A punch," Ali insisted. "Make it look real." Reluctantly, Harkins threw an awkward right hand that Ali easily slipped, responding with a light tap to the man's shoulder. The exchange appeased the crowd momentarily, but Ali knew it wouldn't last. "Keep talking," Ali said as they circled each other. "Tell me about Jimmy." As the second round continued, Robert Harkins spoke of his son, a Golden Gloves hopeful whose promising boxing career had been cut short by his diagnosis 2 years earlier. How Jimmy had followed every moment of Ali's legal battle to regain his boxing license. How, when Eddie Williams had pulled out of tonight's exhibition with an injury, Jimmy had joked from his hospital bed that his father should volunteer as replacement. "It was just a joke," Harkins explained as the round neared its end. "But then I thought, what if I could tell him I'd been in the ring with Muhammad Ali? What if I could give him that story before—" He couldn't finish the sentence. As the bell rang, ending round 2, Ali knew what he had to do. He walked straight to the referee instead of his corner. "I need the microphone," he said firmly. The official hesitated, but something in Ali's expression made it clear this wasn't a request. When Muhammad Ali took the center of the ring with the announcer's microphone in his hand, the restless crowd fell silent. The greatest showman in sports had their attention, and everyone expected one of his famous poems or boasts to explain the strange exhibition they were witnessing. Instead, Ali's voice was quiet and serious. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "I want to introduce you to Robert Harkins. He's not a boxer, he's a father." Ali placed his arm around Harkins' shoulders. "This man works as a janitor at Mount Sinai Hospital. His son Jimmy is 17 years old and fighting leukemia on the 9th floor right now. Jimmy is a boxer, or was, until he got sick. His dream was to someday be in the ring with me." The crowd had gone completely silent now, the earlier boos, replaced by attentive stillness. Ali continued, "Jimmy can't be here tonight, so his father stepped into this ring, not as a fighter, but as a father keeping a promise to his son." Ali turned to face Harkins directly. "Sir, I understand now why. You won't fight back? You're not here for that. You're here to bring something back to Jimmy, the story of being in this ring." Harkins nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "Well," Ali said, raising his voice so it filled the arena, "I think we can do better than that." Ali handed the microphone back to the announcer and leaned in to whisper something to Harkins. The older man's eyes widened, then filled with gratitude as he nodded his agreement. "Ladies and gentlemen, Ali addressed the crowd again after retrieving the microphone. "I'm changing tonight's program. Instead of an exhibition match, I'm asking for your help in giving Jimmy Harkins something more valuable than watching his father in a mismatch with me. I'm asking if you'll join me right now in visiting Jimmy at Mount Sinai Hospital." A murmur of surprise rippled through the audience. Ali raised his hand for silence. "This is a charity event for children's hospitals. Well, there's a young man who loves boxing, who dreamed of being where we are tonight, and who's fighting a much tougher opponent than I ever faced. I'm going to visit him right now. Anyone who wants to join me is welcome." With that, Ali removed his gloves and handed them to Robert Harkins. "These are for Jimmy," he said, "and I'll sign them at the hospital." What happened next would become legendary in boxing circles. Muhammad Ali, still in his boxing shorts and robe, walked out of Madison Square Garden with Robert Harkins by his side. At first, only a few people followed. Ali's entourage, some reporters sensing a story. But as the champion and the janitor made their way through the streets of New York toward Mount Sinai Hospital, more and more spectators joined them. By the time they reached the hospital entrance, hundreds of people were walking behind Ali and Harkins in an impromptu parade that stopped traffic and drew onlookers from surrounding buildings. Hospital security, initially alarmed by the approaching crowd, quickly understood what was happening when they recognized the world champion at the front. "I'm here to see Jimmy Harkins," Ali announced at the reception desk, "and I brought some friends." The 9th floor of Mount Sinai Hospital had never seen anything like it. Nurses and doctors stood speechless as Muhammad Ali strode through the hallway, followed by Robert Harkins and a select group that included Ali's trainers, a few celebrities from the front row of the arena, and several reporters. The rest of the crowd had respectfully remained in the hospital lobby and surrounding grounds, understanding that this moment wasn't meant for public consumption. When they reached room 915, Robert Harkins entered first. "Jimmy," he said softly to the thin teenager in the hospital bed, "there's someone here to see you." Jimmy Harkins, his body ravaged by disease and treatment, had been watching the exhibition match on the small television in his room. He had seen his father enter the ring, had witnessed the awkward beginning of the bout, and had watched in confusion as Ali took the microphone. The hospital TV feed had cut out just as Ali had mentioned visiting the hospital, leaving Jimmy unaware of what was about to happen. "Dad," Jimmy's voice was weak. "What happened at the fight? Why are you—" His question froze in his throat as Muhammad Ali ducked through the doorway into his hospital room. "Your father didn't throw any punches tonight," Ali said, moving to Jimmy's bedside. "He told me that was your job." The look of pure astonishment on Jimmy's face brought tears to the eyes of everyone in the room. Ali sat on the edge of the bed and placed his hand gently on the boy's shoulder. "Your dad told me you're a boxer," Ali continued. "Said you had my poster on your wall." Jimmy could only nod, speechless in the presence of his hero. "Well," Ali said, reaching for the gloves that Robert had carried from the arena, "I thought you might want these, but there's a condition." He held the gloves just out of reach. "You have to promise to use them again someday." Jimmy looked down at his frail arms, then back at Ali with doubt in his eyes. But Ali's expression remained firm, confident. "I've been told I'd never fight again too," the champion said. "Doctors, lawyers, the government, they all said Muhammad Ali was finished. But here I am, and someday here you'll be." Ali spent over 2 hours in Jimmy's room that night. What began as a few minutes of encouragement evolved into a lengthy conversation about boxing techniques, about Jimmy's career before his illness, and ultimately about courage in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. The television crews had long since departed. The crowd outside had dispersed, and even the hospital staff had stopped finding excuses to pass by the famous patient's room. Only Robert Harkins remained, sitting quietly in the corner, watching his son come alive in conversation with his hero. "You know why they call me the greatest, don't you?" Ali asked as the evening grew late. "Because you're the best boxer in the world," Jimmy replied without hesitation. Ali shook his head. "That's what they think it means, but greatness isn't about being the best at something. It's about finding the best in yourself when things are at their worst." He leaned closer to Jimmy. "I see that in you. The same greatness. Your body's taking some hard hits right now, but your spirit, that's still dancing like a butterfly." As Ali finally prepared to leave, he signed both boxing gloves with a personal message to Jimmy. Then, in a gesture that would be recounted for years afterward, the heavyweight champion leaned down and whispered something in Jimmy's ear. Something that made the boy's eyes light up with determination and hope. What Ali whispered remained between them until many years later, when Jimmy Harkins, in complete remission and working as a boxing coach for underprivileged youth, finally shared it in an interview. He told me, "Champions don't just fight when they're winning. They fight when everyone says they're finished. I'll be waiting to see you in the gym, champ." The story of that night spread quickly through the boxing world and beyond. The exhibition match that never happened was replaced by something far more meaningful, a demonstration of what made Ali truly the greatest. Not his speed, not his power, not even his poetic boasts, but his understanding that the most important fights often take place outside the ring. 3 weeks after Ali's visit, Jimmy Harkins was approved for an experimental treatment that would eventually lead to his recovery. His doctors couldn't explain the sudden improvement in his condition that made him eligible for the procedure, but Robert Harkins had his own theory. "The night Ali visited," Robert recalled years later, "was the first time in months I'd seen Jimmy's fighting spirit return. It was like something awakened in him, some belief that wasn't there before. The next morning, his blood work showed the first positive signs we'd seen in nearly a year." For his part, Muhammad Ali never publicly spoke about that night. When reporters would ask, he would simply smile and say, "Some fights aren't for the cameras." But he maintained contact with Jimmy throughout his recovery, occasionally sending notes of encouragement or making quiet follow-up visits when his schedule allowed. The exhibition match that never happened became known in boxing circles as Ali's finest hour, not because of any display of athletic prowess, but because when faced with an opponent who wouldn't fight back, the champion chose compassion over spectacle, substance over show. And in Madison Square Garden, on what was supposed to be just another exhibition night, Muhammad Ali showed the world why he was more than a champion. He was a man who understood that true greatness sometimes means stepping out of the ring entirely. If you made it this far and felt every word, don't leave without subscribing. I tell these stories with my heart in my hands to reach people like you, who feel, who get emotional, who truly live. If this touched you deeply, give back, comment, subscribe. Come be part of this family with me until the next video.